Hey everybody, it's good to see you. It's Ricky, one of the co-founders here at Thinking Focus, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. We're here to delve into the crucial topic of what makes highly effective teams and people, and a subject that is undoubtedly of great interest to everybody. Otherwise, you kind of wouldn't be here. So, and a warm welcome, obviously, as I've said, to everybody. So let's get stuck in, shall we? So, what's the plan? Well, over the next 45 minutes or so, we will explore who's driving your mindset, who's driving the way you think, what makes us more effective. We're going to have a look into that, and we're going to turn theory into practicality so that you can take what we talk about today and apply that in the real world, because that for me is one of the most important things. And there'll be some time for Q&A. Stick around to the end and I'll share how you can download 3 templates that will help you and your team to boost your effectiveness. Along the way, I'm going to pose some questions and we'll use Slido to do that. So keep your mobile device at hand if possible. And if you do have some questions, it would be great if you could drop them in the chat, but if you could precursor them with a Q, that will help me to find them easily. If you could do that, that'd be really useful. And feel free to drop any comments in the chat as we go, because that'd be really cool. So, where you're from, who you work for, anything that you feel is relevant, or just to say hi, that'd be cool as well. So that's the plan for today. Let's work through then. So for those who don't know about Thinking Focus, we're all about behavior change. Every day, we all face challenges that might be of our own making. Now, that might be self-imposed limitations, playing out in terms of the way that we believe that something can't be achieved or we can't do something. We have assumptions that hold us back. One example I see all the time is failing to involve others. We tell ourselves that they're too busy, that they won't like what we've got to say, or they won't like the approach that we're taking. But it's not just us either, though, because it could be organizational constraints where businesses are unwittingly making it harder for you and your people to do your job and serve your customers, and poor systems and processes and those good old fashioned workarounds. And I've got to say, I don't miss those, to be fair. But our goal is to help you and your teams get out of your own way. And we've been doing that since 2016. In fact, for all of us really have been doing it much, much longer than that in terms of our corporate experience too. And I'd also think that I might have had hair way back then, but for those of you who know me, you'll know that's not true. In the time that we've been going, we've worked with over 10,000 participants, over 160 organizations, and we've delivered in excess of 5,000 hours of coaching, and that is increasing month on month. So let's get into some of the content then. I need to let you know about something. Your brain is playing tricks on you. This is a cognitive trick. We tend to think that whatever we pay attention to is the most important thing. Yet in reality, just because something grabs our attention doesn't make it the most important thing. When we do focus on something, our brain will look for evidence to reinforce that that is important. And this is partly due to confirmation bias. We look for evidence that supports what we're already paying attention to, and it ignores anything that it sees around it that doesn't fit with that. And this trick of the mind helps us simplify decisions, but in reality, it can lead us to overvalue things that actually are not that important. If I put this more simply, though, your brain is wired to filter information and focus on what grabs its attention. It's part of the reason we're still here. It's part of the reason why our ancestors survived long enough to make us arrive on this world. But once you do focus on something, your brain convinces you that it's important, even when it's not. And this makes it easy to either miss things or miss more important things, and that can be problematic. And this mental shortcut is actually designed to help us, particularly when we're overwhelmed, but it can cause us to prioritize the wrong things at the wrong time. So these kind of play out in these cognitive errors that you see all the time. You'll see these manifest themselves in suboptimal results. You'll see results that either stagnate or decline. You'll see, your teams, well, they become disenfranchised. They lead to poor engagement and quiet quitting. Or worse, they stay in that zombie form, adding little to no value, yet they keep turning up, taking the paycheck. We know it, we unknowingly create learned helplessness among our people because they normalize and accept poorly designed systems and processes. And that impacts your customers who become dissatisfied. They buy less and become less loyal, making it even harder to retain the business that you work so hard to win in the first place. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to ask you a question. Grab your mobile device. What I want you to do is use the QR code here or dial into slido.com with the event code #HPT. And what I want to know is what is limiting you and or your team's performance right now? What is it that's getting in the way? What's going on? Oh, somebody's already in. That's great. Pressure to find more clients, absolutely. And you can add more to this list. Don't feel like you can just add the one thing. Workload, absolutely. Oh, the past, the old behaviors. Confidence. So I assume in this context, it's a lack of confidence. Oh, of course, yeah, because we also have to be mindful that we have a family, we have those outside of the workplace that impact us as well, that we have to account for. Legacy unhappiness in the organization, I assume. Lots of stuff getting in our way. Oh, we're still going. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Keep them coming if you've got them. Don't feel like there's a limit. Not sharing information. I've really opened Pandora's box now, haven't I? This is brilliant. Thank you. Keep them coming. Resources, I assume again, lack of resources. Well, we're going to talk about bright, shiny objects distracting leaders. It's almost as if you've written my session for me. Thank you. Okay, well, let's kind of move on. That's brilliant. Thank you. So we'll come back to some of those in reality as we move forward. So organizationally then, how do we typically combat this? Well, we swing for the fences, don't we? We look for that silver bullet that will solve all our problems. And that might be dreaming or having this one all singing, all dancing system that can do everything. But in my experience, every new system has compromises. It overpromises and often underdelivers. It oversimplifies the problems that it's supposed to solve. So actually, it leaves a fair bitter taste in the mouth, a level of dissatisfaction. And the question for me, though, is who's making these compromises? Is it the end user or the project teams, software engineers, or who else is having a say in that? Because the person that's serving your customer really should be driving this, really should be in charge in terms of how they work, that is. Let's say, for example, that you want to be known for having the most customers. Well, that means you're going to have to compromise on the quality of service. The cost of resourcing, both service and acquisition, is going to be enormous. So you're going to have to prioritize what are you prepared to accept in order to achieve the other. And the question then is, how do your people decide on what's most important? Are you prepared to leave that to chance? Because the way this works is you've got to make it clear that we really care about these things and we're quite happy to accept these things. And the reality is, leaders typically, in my experience, a bit like Freddie Mercury would say, they want it all and they want it now. Well, and the simplistic answer is you can't have it all. And certainly, generally in my experience, you can't have it now. But also, we get caught out by cognitive tunneling when we can see that there's just so many problems. So we double down, we overfocus, and we try to fix too much all at once. When you spread resources too thin, it's obvious you're setting yourselves up to fail somewhere. You may achieve less than you want, or worse, you're going to make no impact at all. Either way, you're wasting valuable resources, valuable time. And then we respond to the noise, don't we? So if something's going wrong, we've said quantity of customers is more important than the service that we provide because we're driving for growth. But actually, when customers start shouting, I imagine the emphasis shifts. So when people are shouting, it's easy to believe that the problem is clear. However, when we respond to this availability bias, we risk not gathering a wider perspective, jumping straight in, determined to fix the problem, but either we fix the wrong thing or we make things worse. And commonly we fall foul of what we know as the insanity loop. This is the belief that we do the same thing again and again, but if we do it faster, if we do it better, if we do it differently, if it's suddenly going to transform our fortunes and all will come good. And of course, I've never seen anyone improve a bad process simply by working harder. So how do we combat this? Well, part of that is about clarity and focus. But we're starting to get into the magic here. Before you get excited, though, there's no trick. This is about recalibrating our minds. It's about managing our attention. It's about focusing on what we really care about. And that starts for me with brilliant basics. Brilliant basics are not just any practices, but these are the fundamentals that you and your team master to pave the way to success. And these steps could be in a marketing funnel. They could be in an operational process. They could be in your project delivery or even a sales process. Excuse me, Following consistent steps leads to the desired outcome. And that might be a successful project implementation, financial transaction, satisfied customer, or you make an impact in your community. Excuse me. My apologies. Talking too much. But brilliant basics are repeatable steps that will, more often than not, lead to a desired outcome. So let's have a look a bit more about what I mean by these. Brilliant basics start by understanding the relationship between inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Inputs are the resources, the time, the effort invested in tactics and activities. And that might be things like sales meetings. It could be fact finds, account planning, things like that. And outputs are the result of these inputs. And that could lead us down to proposals, quotes, tenders, improved customer relationships, or discovering some customer insight. And then outcomes, well, that's why we do the work that we do, those inputs and outputs. The outcome is where the value is created. It's the return on investment and effort that we put in. And this is where you get paid. This is where you sign a new contract. This is where you win a new customer, or you might even retain or delight an existing customer. And for us, we do a lot of work in corporate land, and we came across one particular client that described outcomes in a way that was really simple yet really powerful. And we we've stolen it, if we're honest. But it comes down to basically focusing on one or more of these outcomes. It's about cash, because cash is what pays the bills. It's about your revenues, your profit, your EBITDA. Colleagues, this is how you look after, attract, and retain your people. Customers, it's how you satisfy, grow, and retain your customers. And communities, we see more and more of this in organizations that we work with, where they're looking to make an impact or contribute to the wider community that they exist within. It is important, though, to note that you cannot manage an outcome. It's too late. An outcome only happens because you've done the work, those inputs and those outputs. And you can't coach an outcome. So if you expect people just to go and miraculously deliver more cash, or help their teams win more customers, or satisfy some elements in the community, there's probably an input and an output that's preceded it. So you need to go back to brilliant basics. Of course, it's never that easy. We talked at the start about how we get in our own way. We talked about all of those things that you kindly shared in that Slido at the start. And the same is true of brilliant basics. You'll face distractions. Distractors, as the name suggests, hinder your progress. I love to describe these as almost the Dementors from Harry Potter. Now, these might occur because there's a lack of discipline in following your brilliant basics, a lack of attention to detail, or maybe a misstep in the process. And that could be due to wrong mindset. You convince yourself it can't be done, that this won't work, so why on earth would you bother? And that might lead to boredom or tuning out. There may also be someone or something that's redirecting your focus. I remember in the work that I used to do in corporate land, and that is quite a while ago now, but how many times your boss would come by your desk and ask you to look at something without considering the impact on what you're working on. Can you just have a look at this? It'll only take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it might be. Well, that's going to have an impact in terms of my ability to deliver. But I never felt confident or comfortable to say, but I've got all this to do. So that becomes a distraction. And distractors feel like you're swimming against the tide, expending effort without making any headway. And it can almost feel like you're going backwards at times. And then, of course, on that Slido, and that first question I asked, accelerators, these are the shiny new things. These are the distractions that your leaders are hoping will boost performance. It could be new technologies. It could be innovation methods, strategic initiatives that we believe will accelerate teams' progress towards the goals. And I imagine that the buzzword right now in this space is AI. Lots of work is going on, certainly in our clients, around the impact AI is going to have, how they can leverage it, how they can harness it. Well, the question is, what are they not doing while they're doing that? Now, if they've created people with dedicated time to go do that so they can protect the brilliant basics, that's brilliant. But in my experience, it's a side of the desk type project. It's, can you have a look at this when you get a moment type stuff. And the biggest challenge here is we convince ourselves that this time will be the one that will change everything. Remember, though, how your brain works. It will believe you. If you start paying attention to these things, it will believe you that says, okay, so this is important now then. And it doesn't matter that there's no compelling business case, that you're taking resources off things that are far more important, or we're missing or failing on more pressing goals that are important that we've planned to do. One of the examples we often use is the idea that you had in the shower doesn't suddenly make it to the top of the list because you had it this morning, when actually you've done all the thinking and planning about your strategy and around your tactics, and that suddenly renders those out of kilter. That suddenly renders those irrelevant. But again, like we said, most leaders will go, yeah, but I want those as well. So my warning here is beware accelerators. They might just be the distractor in disguise that takes you off task. Okay, so let's dial into this in a little bit more. Let's get practical with it, shall we? And give you some things that you can start to implement when you go away from today, from this session. But before we do that, I have a question for you. I want you to think about your team and your department. And I want you to tell me what 3 factors would give you the confidence and reassurance that your business, department, or teams are working well. What tells you they're in control? I'll give you an example. I once ran a call center with more metrics than the London Stock Exchange. But for me, when I dialed it back, it was all about call volume, talk time, and wait time. And these metrics would tell me really quickly whether I got a problem coming and whether I needed to react and respond to that. So again, it's a word cloud. Somebody's already on the case, which is great. Thank you very much. But what is it? What 3 factors will give you the confidence and reassurance that your business, department, or team is working well? How do you know? Okay, exceeding KPIs. I'm interested to know which KPIs, if there are ones you can share, by the way. Oh, so one of the factors is seeing, and I'm assuming I'm reading into this right, is that your team are taking more autonomy. They're just getting on with it. Oh wow, you've really caught on now. Okay, we're seeing happy customers. Things are calm. We're generating prospects, moving things down the funnel. Employees are happy. And we'd see that in terms of the way they go about their work, the fact they're staying and contributing and happy to do so. Well, lots of good indicators. Yep, more people turning up, not taking the duvet days that they take. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Oh, one more coming through. Level of work outputted. So we're going to see some productivity. We're going to see some impact in terms of delivery and deliverables, which is great. Okay, thank you for that. So when you look at a process, and I've got a lens here that kind of builds up inputs, outputs, and outcomes, as you'll see, you can visualize the relationship and interdependencies between what you do, the inputs, the things you generate, which are the result of what you do, they're the outputs, and then of course the result, which is the outcome. This is the bit that makes a difference. And for me, this plays out in 3 kind of killer questions. Are we doing what matters? What really matters? Because this is not about efficiency and doing lots of things and doing them well. This is about effectiveness, which is about doing the right things in the right way at the right time. It's also about quality and quantity management, which is what we're doing making a difference? Is it making an impact? And then, of course, is that leading to an outcome that we wanted? And these are just examples, by the way, that might be in terms of our sales revenues. It could be in terms of our market growth. It could be in terms of project X has actually been delivered. But if you look at this and you go, let's imagine I make 20 client calls in a day. If I do that and there's no purpose to it, it's just busyness. There's no effectiveness in there. And just asking me to make more calls is not going to change that dynamic, because if I'm doing them badly, then that's not going to help. However, if you were to spend time in the quality and quantity management space, because I'm actually putting the inputs in, you now have something to work with. You have something to coach, to support, to listen or observe, or give me some feedback that will help me to perhaps even make less calls, but be more effective with them, as opposed to making 20 calls that just are keeping people happy. It's a numbers game. And what we're trying to say here is Brilliant Basics is about doing the right things, doing them in the right way to deliver the outcomes that you want. And that's about what's the activity management plan that we've got? Are we working on the right things? Quality and quantity, are we doing enough of the right things to deliver the outcome that we actually need? Because we can deliver outcomes, but are we delivering enough of those outcomes? And then that's about skill, it's about competence, it's about resource, and you as managers and leaders can make those choices as you see fit. Fundamentally, if we can get more by doing it the right way, then that's always going to be the best option in terms of that. So knowing your brilliant basics, the inputs that create the outputs which lead to outcomes, means that you can decide what levers to pull and when. And this is where those KPIs that we talked about just a couple of slides ago were really important, because if you're doing well, you've got choices. You can now decide, do we speed up? Do we focus on eliminating some distractions? Or do we consider some of those accelerators that we've had on the table? It could be, though, you're doing poorly, in which case, this is where those KPIs will tell you where to look and where to focus your time. So if it is about volume of calls, is it about quality of calls? And you can now start to work out what's the solution to the problem. What's my remedial action that I can build in order to create some better outcomes in terms of performance and results. Remember, there's little point speeding up a broken process. It's just not going to work for you. And I imagine when you look at these sort of things, I imagine your senior leaders, and we've all worked for them, you might even be one, run weekly meetings. Well, this is them managing your attention. This is about keeping you focused, keeping the rubber on the road. And it's about working out whether we can flag those issues early or whether we can leverage opportunities that might be on the table right now. All of that really important. Distractors. Let's look at them in practical sense. So we do loads of work with clients all over the world, and we use this equation with them all the time. It's one of our most cathartic exercises, and people who go through this process absolutely love it. And we use it in our breakthrough workshops, where we ask people to vent. We give them permission to have a good old-fashioned moan, whine, whinge, however you want to describe it. And we surface what's going on behind the scenes, what's in their heads. And we describe this, we put a label on it, we call it interference. So, and the whole point here is going, so what are we going to do about it then? So we've got it out on the table. What are we going to do about it? So in this example, you've got PE, which is your performance. You've got PO, which is your potential. And for the purposes of this exercise, this is always limited to 100%. So your potential is 100%. And then the interference, well, guess what? They're your distractors. What are the things getting in your way? And more importantly, to what extent? And the question that we ask all the time is how much interference is getting in your way as a percentage. And that then will tell us what level we're actually performing at. Where's the headroom? Where's the growth opportunity in this? So what I want to do is I want to ask you a question. I want you to tell me, if your team potential equals 100%, what percentage of interference is currently limiting your performance? Is it 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or 80% plus? There just wasn't enough space on the screen to give you all the options. So I kind of gave you a couple of bands to work within. So it'd be really cool if you could share with me where you believe your team or organization, however you want to look at it, where do they sit right now? Wow. Somebody as high as 80%. Oh no, maybe not. Maybe not. Sorry. Well, you've got 60 to 80% in there, haven't you? Okay. So let's imagine just for a second that you all work for the same organization. What you're saying, and I'm going to use an average here looking at this, is actually it's around probably the 40% mark. So which means we're performing at 60%. So we've got 40% of interference. This is the stuff getting in the way, which means we're performing at around 60%. And I'm using a very ballpark average here. But the important thing is not to stress about the number. We know it's not at the top end, and we know it isn't zero either. So there are distractors that are causing us some challenges that if we were to unlock them, will create unlock some hidden potential. And the secret therefore is, how do we focus on those? How do we pick the right ones that are going to move the needle? Because we can't do it all. So we have to be clear what we're going to work on and what we're not. And that normally plays out in terms of these types of things. So you can imagine I've done this exercise many times, and you might recognize some of these things. So things around your people, things around the team, things like external factors, competition, and stuff like that, and also ways of working. So they're all playing out, and that's great. So we get a group to just vent. They basically socialize what's going on in their heads, and these are either but real or perceived. And then what we're trying to do essentially is get them to think about, so what then? So how do we work out what to do about them and which ones are going to be worthwhile doing something with? And then what we do, we take those post-its and we ask them to plot them on this kind of 2 by 2. We've positioned it as a cloud. And down the middle, you can see there's control. Is it in my control or outside my control? Along the horizontal, it's of whether I think, in other words, I'm assuming, or whether I know. Can I substantiate this? Can I back it up? Can I validate what I'm saying with some evidence to support that? So we get them essentially to plot those on here. And again, I've just done this randomly, by the way, but what you've got in essence is 4 quadrants now. So you've got the things that you think are outside your control, those things that you know are outside your control, those that are in your control, but you're lacking perhaps some evidence and some clarity on. And then you've got those that you think are actually in your control. We can do something about. And the question is, which ones do we want to pick on? Which ones do we want to work on that will make the biggest impact in terms of our performance? Which are going to move the needle the most? When I look at this, the one in the middle, the senior execs left field requests, is an interesting one because it's positioned often in our experience as outside of somebody's control. It's the boss. They're asking me to do something. When in reality, do you have a conversation with the boss when they do come with a left field request and ask them, how important is this in relation to everything else you've got on? And if it is important, which of the others are they prepared to give up on, wait for, or perhaps dial back a bit in order to fit this in? And when you position it back in that way, this is about managing upwards, coaching upwards to get the exec to do two things. One is understand what you've got on your plate, but also to recognize you can't just keep piling stuff on. Now, they might still make that decision, they might still make that choice, but at least you've had that conversation around that. And you've also explained there's an impact and a consequence of this. And it might be they can make some choices around diverting either that particular request or something else you're working on somewhere else where they can make an impact with it. But the point here is it's not just I get to moan and whinge and everything's terrible. What we're then doing is flipping it in terms of, so what are you prepared to do about it then? But let's be clear, you can't do everything. So which ones make the biggest impact and which ones actually do you need to just let go of and stop moaning? Or stop whining, whichever you prefer. But fundamentally, this is about giving individuals control and choice around what they do. So I want to pause for a second, mainly before my voice gives up. But if you were to think about, and again, this is just for you, mental note, or a physical note if you've got a pen and paper handy. What two distractions, if resolved, would make a step change in your performance? So just think about some of the things that you put out there in terms of the interference on that word cloud. What two distractions, if resolved, would make a step change? And even pop it in the comments as well if you wanted to. Nothing like a bit of public commitment. See lots of familiar faces in the that have joined the session. So hello, everybody. And we've even got somebody in from Texas. Welcome, Beth. Great to have you on board. Good to see some of my my favorite people at Bally's on there as well. Okay, got your questions as well, Beth. So we'll come back to that. So let's move this on a second. So let's think about accelerators then. And again, I'm going to start with reflection. What one thing would transform your performance? So thinking about this in something that's going to move the needle, something that's going to help you to move forward at a pace, within the resources, within the realms of what you have at your disposal. What one thing would transform your performance? Again, mental note or physical note, whatever suits you. Just have a think about that. Okay, hopefully you've captured at least something. This is a model that we use a lot as well. It helps organizations, it helps teams, helps individuals to make some choices about what to focus on. So in terms of prioritization, so we use this as a critical thinking tool. So down that kind of left vertical axis, you've got high impact, minimal impact, and we've got difficult to achieve versus very easy. And this model is very simple. It's the ease versus impact matrix. And then what we get you to do is we get you to plot, or you could do this as a team, you could do it individually, plot your things that you want to work on, want to think about, plot them on that matrix. Are they going to deliver a big impact, or are they going to be difficult to achieve? Clearly, you're going to let go of the stuff in this bottom left quadrant here. And really what we want you to do is be focusing your time and energy on the things that are easiest to implement, but will give you the greatest bang for your buck, greatest return on investment. And I think that's kind of critical to move the needle quickly. Having said that, though, there may be some things that can give you high impact, but because they're difficult to achieve, might need resource, they might need investment, and might need a number of other things. So that's about which of those do we want to go and create a business case for? Which ones do we care about the most? Which ones are going to move the needle the most? So this is just about using criteria in order to go, can't boil the ocean, let's pick those. And this works just as well with distractors as it does with some of your accelerators as well. So it's just a great little prioritization tool that I thought I'd share that you'd find interesting. So Summary. Get the basics right. This is the fundamental number one. This is about focusing on what really matters and get brilliant at it. Jim Collins in Good to Great talks about the hedgehog principle. This is absolutely in that sweet spot of be great at what you do and do it well. Then it's about eliminating distractions, but don't boil the ocean. Find no more than 2 at a time and go for it. Fix them, deliver them, move them out the way, create more space to do those brilliant basics better. Or if you're doing really well, you get the third choice, which is all about limiting your team, though, to one accelerator, because accelerators in my experience usually are very underestimated in terms of size, scale, scope, cost, all of those things. So if we're going to do it, let's limit it to one. Let's do it really well. We can always come back later when we've done that and do the next one. And I know this is about fighting leadership temptation to do it all and do it now. But that then plays against some research that was done by the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development in the UK, which talks about any more than 7 goals and you're starting to dilute your focus. And you don't just run the risk of achieving less, you run the risk of achieving nothing because you're so diluted in terms of your focus, in terms of your resource, terms of your effort. I was with a client just last week and they said that, this constant switching it takes time to stop doing one thing and flip to another and then flip back. And they reckon from a productivity cost, it's 40% lost by switching task from one to the other. And that's a hell of a premium to pay when you could just get out of the way and let them do what they do it well, and then be ready for the next thing when it comes. So that's my summary. I would stick with get the basics right first and foremost and let the others come in as and when, but stick to those brilliant basics. Okay, so on time, I think, for a bit of Q&A. Now, I have a question from Beth, which talks about the exec consistently doesn't care about the impact and work in progress. Exec changes the course regularly. What would be an approach? Well, 2 things here. One, I'm interested in what the group think, and if there's any words of wisdom, any pearls of wisdom that we can share with Beth, that would be awesome. But for me, Beth, this is about having conversations. At the end of the day, the exec have the right, the privilege to make those calls. And it's about helping them to understand the impact and consequences of those calls, because there is a limit to what we can all deliver. We are all bound by the same 24-hour days, despite perhaps some exec believing that's not true, but we are all bound by the same limits. Some of us have limitations in terms of capability and how quick we can work, in terms of what we can actually work on based on our skills. And this is about how do we raise that debate to a point that we help them to understand the impact and consequences. We show them if necessary, but fundamentally, if they're not prepared to give, then they're the ones who's next on the block when the cookie crumbles. Because at some point they're either going to deliver, because in my experience, and I've been through this, and some of my colleagues, we just double down and we make it happen. And at some point, something is going to give, something is going to break. So those people that got you out of jail this time, next time, maybe even the time after that, at some point, are either going to opt out or they're going to fall over, one or the other. And again, this is about education of the exec. And certainly in the work that we do, we have these forthright conversations, sometimes on behalf of our clients, because they don't feel like the career limiting conversations can be had in quite the same way. So I'm not sure whether that necessarily gives you anything concrete, Beth, but from my perspective, we have to educate the exec and understand the impact and the implications of what they do, the way they work, and how that's going to have a knock-on impact on others. And we've seen it in lots of organizations that we've worked with. I've seen it in organizations I've worked in. So, again, if there's anybody else with any pearls of wisdom that they want to share with Beth, that's great. Any other questions? One of the questions we get quite often is around this interference piece. Some literally do stress the number and they want to quantify it. And it's not about quantifying the number. It's about recognition that not everything is great. And that therefore means there's opportunity for us to go and change some stuff. And the key question is how do we do that? By doing this with your team enables you to engage them in the solution, as opposed to just allowing them to vent. Because what we're not saying is you get to moan and whinge, but we'll take it on and do all the work. Actually, there's a question here that says, so what are you prepared to do about it? And sometimes we have to help them, coach them into letting go, because we seem to hold on to some of these things longer than perhaps we might. So the reality is, people don't get away with it. They get involved, but they also get involved in the solution, not just inventing and the problem. Because quite often we see people are happy to say what's on their mind, but they expect somehow that leadership to go away and fix this for them. And that's not how this works. This is about inclusivity. It's about working together. It's about solving problems together. And also you create some endowment effect amongst the group, because they're now involved in the solution, shaping it and owning it and making it work for the organization. So that's another typical question that we get faced with on a regular basis. Okay, seems like Janice has got something to offer here, which is great. Let me pop that up for everybody to see. So in our experience, the successful teams have good communication from the exec, so the whole company know their objectives and why they exist. Absolutely, Janice, 100%. Clarity and purpose, the what and the why, as we would describe it, are fundamental and are something that you don't just do once. This is by the time your execs are getting bored of the message is probably about the time it's starting to land. So I think this good communication is often, it's repeating the message almost to a level of boredom. So I think that's, I don't mean boredom in terms of having to say it, not necessarily in terms of the quality of the message. The message is really important, but knowing the what and the why, absolutely vital. So thanks for that, Janice. Really, really valuable. Okay, let's kind of wind this up then. Just to let you know, coming up in November, I'm going to be joined by one of my colleagues, Graham, and we're going to talk about mindset shift. We're going to talk about the key to driving performance and empowering teams. And that's about how to reframe unhelpful thinking, unhelpful thoughts, how to control the narrative in your head, your self-talk, your rumination. How do you manage that and help your teams to be more solution focused? So, a lot of the work we do, we see lots of problem focused teams. What the success in this is about, how do we flip it and help them to take ownership of some of this and take control and responsibility for some of this. So we're going to be bringing that to life in terms of November. So look out for the invite to that one. Loads more available from us. We've got our Thinking Focus channel on LinkedIn. We've got our regular monthly newsletter, Mindset Matters, that comes out, like I said, every month. And then we've got this YouTube channel that's packed full of content. We're fast on approaching 90,000 subscribers, and we're also approaching nearly 1 million views. So I'm really excited to push through those thresholds. So anything you can do to help, that would be fantastic. Go and check it out, because there's stuff that you can use, and it's all part and parcel and in your sweet spot. And then I promised you some templates, didn't I, at the very beginning? Well, I've created a free download. Let me, bear with me 1 second, because I'm going to put this link in the chat for you. So there we go. So you've got the link in the chat. So this link will give you access to these documents. So they're what we've discussed in this session. There's also the bonus element of the ease versus impact matrix in there as well. But these will help you to go and have some conversations and dialogue with your people. It'll help you to go and work with the distractors, get them on the table, get them thinking about them, get them working them through. So please fill your boots, make the most of those opportunities. And I finish with one of my favorite quotes, which is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And that's all about dialing into your brilliant basics, creating these, doing them fantastically well. And I think Will Durant borrowed this or adapted it from a comment by Aristotle. But there you go. Fill your boots. Make use of the content that I've shared. Put the link on the screen as well. So fill your boots. Other than that, I'm going to be around if anybody's got any questions. If you want to hang around and ask some questions through the chat, that's absolutely fine. But if you've got more busy, important things to do, then that's equally fine. But all remains for me to say is thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me today. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you, everybody. You're more than welcome. Thank you, Josh. Goodbye. Right. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the stream there, and we'll see you on the next one in November. Take care.